Winter had always been my favorite season. The crisp air, the soft puffs of snow, and the cozy nights by the fire made it the perfect time of year. But this winter, my love for the season turned into a nightmare that I could never have imagined. It all started with what seemed like a typical winter evening in my small town. The sky was dark, and the air was colder than usual. I had just finished a long day at work, and was looking forward to curling up in front of the fire with a good book. But as I settled into my armchair, I noticed something strange outside. The snow was falling in thick, heavy flakes, almost as if it were being pulled down. At first I thought it was just odd weather, but as the night went on, the snow became more and more intense. It was as if the storm had a life of its own, spreading fear and unease throughout the town. And then I heard something scratching at my door. I tried to shrug it off, thinking it was just the wind, but the scratching grew louder and more persistent. I reluctantly got up from my chair and walked over to the door. As soon as I touched the doorknob, the scratching stopped. I hesitated for a moment, but then I heard a faint whisper. It was a voice I didn't recognize, and it was calling my name. I quickly locked the door and went back to my chair, trying to convince myself that it was all in my head. But the scratching and whispering continued throughout the night. I tried to cover my ears and ignore it, but it seemed to be getting closer and closer. I couldn't take it anymore, so I decided to call the police. But when I picked up the phone, there was no dial tone. The power had gone out. I started to panic. I was alone in my house, with no one else around, and something was trying to get in. I searched my house for a weapon and settled on a fireplace poker. Armed with the poker, I huddled in a corner of my living room, waiting for the morning to come. But as the hours passed, the snowfall only got heavier, and the scratching and whispering only grew louder. The morning finally came, and with it, the realization that I was trapped. The snow was piled high against my windows and door, making it impossible to leave. I tried calling for help, but my phone was still dead. I was completely cut off from the outside world, and I had no idea how long the storm would last. As the day went on, I could feel a sense of dread settling in. The scratching and whispering had stopped, but there was an eerie silence outside. I started to think that maybe the storm wasn't natural. Maybe there was something sinister behind it. As the sun started to set, I heard a loud thud against my front door. I froze, my heart racing as I waited for something to happen. But then I heard a familiar voice calling out to me. It was my mother's voice, telling me to come to the door. I rushed to the door, desperate to see a familiar face and escape this nightmare. But as soon as I opened the door, I knew something was terribly wrong. My mother's face was twisted into a grotesque version of itself, her once bright eyes now empty and soulless. She tried to grab me, but I managed to slam the door shut and lock it once again. I was completely alone, trapped in my own home with whatever evil was lurking outside. I spent the rest of the night cowering in fear, praying for the storm to pass and for help to come. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of silence. The storm had finally passed, and I could see the sun shining through my windows. The snow had melted, and the once beautiful landscape was now a barren wasteland. I quickly grabbed my phone and called for help, tears streaming down my face as I recounted the horrors of the past few days. It's been a year since that winter, but the memories still haunt me. I left that small town and never looked back, but I can't escape the feeling that whatever terror was unleashed that winter is still out there, waiting for its next victim. From that day on, I've never looked at winter the same way. the season of warmth and happiness has become a symbol of fear and unimaginable horror.